Retrofitting is one of the most sustainable things we can do in our housing. The embodied energy, the water, the pollutants, all made in manufacture of materials, it's already happened. So rather than demolishing and getting rid of it, we should now be building, rebuilding, reusing, recycling. And this house here is a lovely example. Rosemary Morrow, when she bought this house, recognised the attributes. It's a standard, simple, small suburban house, no longer. Because the immediate things were the fact that it's facing north. North, necessary in the southern hemisphere for the sun. So you will see shortly the way she's increased the amount of glass and doors opening onto the northern side. At the same time, she's got light from a number of different directions. So inside rooms like this, there is no need for internal lights, even on the dullest of days. Obviously, that's a major saving in energy use. She's removed a few walls here and there, and that, of course, has increased the spatial quality of where she lives and how she lives. So there's all these simple things by taking a very ordinary brick veneer box and simply economically using recycled materials, second-hand doors, second-hand windows, and with just a little bit of skill and understanding having them inserted to turn a simple ordinary suburban box into a lovely example of Zone Zero permaculture.
So when I looked at this little bedroom, I realised if I took the wall out, then the heater, which is in the living room, would be able to move the warmth through to that room. So I've got sunlight, which is going to heat even on a grey day and in winter. I've got the wood stove. I can have another form of heating, and I cut the wall out up high because, as everyone knows, heat rises and that room will be part of a cycle of warm air when the wood fire's going. I took out the door because it was too busy and to simplify. So I was looking at simplicity and improving the space for warmth and light. If I had kept that wall, I'd be going in and out the doorway there. That meant in and out for phones, in and out for heating, to visit people. When people came this way, I've got dedicated space which is going to work for natural resources. Simultaneously, I realised that the kitchen had a wall here. Now, the big advantage of these brick veneer homes is that they're built of plaster cardboard. So for a day or two's work, the builder can come in, remove the wall, again right to the ceiling so the heat can move freely. Now I've got warmth for the kitchen. I can actually cook on that heater if I want to. I've got late afternoon sun and I have light. So by removing this wall here, it's opened up the whole section. So again, the telephone, I can have cooking, I have warmth, I have light, and I have a sense of openness. So if I had bought a brick home and they were cutting bricks out, it would be a whole different situation for trying to get these qualities that I want in rooms. And so I'm also trying to use, as far as I can, and it's constant battle and negotiation, environmental things. Recycling's important, reusing's important, second-hand goods are important. The carpet actually did stink of smoke because the person was a heavy smoker, and cat wee. So I'm replacing that with timber boards made in Australia. Not full boards, but ply. And the choices you have are ply or veneer or solid timber. Now this was difficult because solid timber, which is probably number one choice, has to be sanded and sealed at least 3 times. And that means the volatile organic compounds are absolutely putrid to smell. This one I've got is an Australian product, 6-inch plywood, and I'm having timber floors because they're warmer even than a carpet in winter, and I know from experience. Also because I can just run a mop with a little bit of the methylated spirits so I can get rid of a vacuum cleaner, which again is a user of energy, because again reducing electrical things is really important in my calculations, and perhaps yours. So I've decided on the floorboards, which will go down. In permaculture, and I'm a permaculturalist, we say anything really important for basic needs, like heating, cooking, and water should come from two sources. So when I looked at this place, I had to know that I could get rainwater in and gravity feed into the house as well as town water. But I also was very pleased to see this big heater, because I then have the choice of cooking on gas, cooking outside, or cooking inside. And with the cooking plate on that, it's going to cut down energy use a lot, and it can work in two ways for me, for food and warmth. If there were some breakdown of energy sources, then I can continue, life will go on as usual, pretty much. I wanted brick veneer because low maintenance. The real cost of moving is partly the cost of the house plus future maintenance. This has got a tin roof and is brick veneer. Now, for me it's a bit of an aesthetic. I don't like these brick veneer houses very much. So I have been investigating what it would take to put plaster on it. There's a new product now which does not give any volatile organic acids, which is 25-year guarantee, so it's much better than paint. So by adding a skin over the bricks in a colour of my choice, I can actually make the place look better and sit in the environment, but add considerably to the insulation of the walls. So that will reduce my heating bills, and it will also reduce maintenance. When I looked at the backyard, I thought, quite a few weeds, and they're all out front, and the council will mulch them for me next week. But the two main problems, the two big problems, is this huge pine tree here, ginormous, and the other one that's tall and straight but doesn't have so much branching there. So before I bought the house, I said to the neighbours, look, I'm not buying that house unless we can take out the tree that's on your land. And they said, well, we've been wanting to do that for years, so we're going to share the cost. And all the pines will go. Now that is going to make a huge difference to light, access and warmth to the whole house. Unbelievably different. And it's difficult to know today when it's a little bit grey, but it will actually transform the whole place. When the tree's down, it'll change everything about the light and the sun's arc won't change, but it will change the sun's arc across this land. Now, if I plant it down there, it may not get sun because it's low down and my neighbours have fruit trees. If I plant it down the back corner, I'll never get down there to do anything. If I plant it near the kitchen where I can use the grey water from the kitchen and the grey water from the bathroom, or gravity feed from the tanks that will go in here somewhere, where I'm looking at it, out the kitchen window, the garden will be looked after. Now I'm going to do something quite radical for me. I've always had a fairly big garden. This time I'm going to make it very small and intensive, because I've realised how little you need to plant for a garden, if you do it carefully, to get really good yields and be able to eat all year something. If you don't want to go to the shop, you can at least just go out to the garden. And I've always had two bigger gardens. I've always had the sense of needing a lot. This time it's going to be quite small and very carefully planted, and I want sunflowers as well for the table. But having the view onto it is very important in keeping a garden growing well. Looking at it makes a garden grow. It's much cheaper for the environment. My ecological footprint's much smaller to redo a house that's already there than to source a new one. Energy and water are down, daylight's up, close to transport, maintenance low, and the house will work for me. things have to get worse before they get better, and this time they really did. So last time we talked about water and energy and insulation, and since that time a lot happened. The first thing I did was take down an enormous pine tree over there. Now what did that do? It generated these little mountains. Mountains of mulch, mountains of sawdust, mountains of everything. So then we had the tree down. I couldn't do anything for the tree down. It was about shaping the land, because I knew that if we took the tree down after we had big holes in the ground, well, it wouldn't work. So the first thing was to cut the tree and have it mulched and keep all the mulch on site. One is the real coarse wood chip that is wonderful on the ground and slow to break down. So that's in one pile. And the other thing I have is this very fine sawdust from the saw, and that's in this pile. So if I dug my hand deeply into here, I'd probably find it's hot in the middle and it's actually composting. So that will be wonderful for vegetables and wonderful for exotics. But for the bush plants, and I've probably put 30 in since last time, I'm using the coarser chip. So over here I've started to plant as a windbreak. For that, multi-stemmed, small-leafed evergreen plants, because I don't want to block out the western sun, especially in winter. So those things have been accomplished and they're happening. And the other thing has been water, because it's so important. I was lucky because it was dry. So I made a decision to get 2 15,000 litre tanks, and they're over here. Now, when you're putting in water tanks, you have to be able to get water off the roof, and in this case the level of the land to the height of the gutter is only 2.5 metres. So for good landscaping in the future, the tanks were dug into the ground. So they're down, half a metre at the back, quite low at the front. Now I could have got one big tank, but if an animal dies in it, or it's polluted, or anything goes wrong, I lose all that water. So it's more expensive, but it's safer, if you want your own water, to have 2 tanks. So the first tank gets the water off the roof and it will drop its overflow into the second tank. Now you have to think this out before you get the tanks, because there's also the situation around overflow from your tanks, because they will fill up. This roof is not huge, but it will at least capture 200,000 litres a year, and therefore I have to have a plan for overflow. So the plan is it will come underground and down through a stone race into all this chaos. Looks like a bomb site, I know. So the water coming off the second tank will come down through small stones. This gets moved, it's compost, into bigger stones, and then the first holding pond. When the holding ponds fall, it goes into the bigger pond. So I think I've got 2 15,000 litre tanks plus about another 6,000 to 7,000 litres. I feel completely safe, and the environment will be very lovely here. It will moderate it because water holds heat so well. So here's the next door neighbour who has had to put a tank in according to government regulations now, and it's a very good idea. But where they've sited their tank is the lowest place on the ground. If they had not cut in so deeply and put the tank up higher by half a metre to a metre just so they could catch the runoff from the roof, they would have had a lot of gravity flow from that right round the front of the house, all their garden, and possibly even some bathroom usage. So you see now, to use that effectively, they probably need a pump, and that's one more complication in your life. So put your tank so that you can get gravity-fed use from it. So what I had in here when I moved in was a shag pile carpet that smelt of smoke. So that got ripped up, and with it came the underfelt. Now underfelt is really a fairly terrible product to try to get rid of. So I've saved all the underfelt and I've put it as a liner for my pond. Now, the wind blew it away, but rocks will cut through the plastic and the liner, so you can either use a couple of inches of sand, which is hard to keep on the sides, or I can use cement. There are not many options when you haven't got, or I could get clay, and that's difficult here because the soils drain so quickly. So what I've done is collect all the underfelt, and I'm going to put it around the pond before I put down the special dam liner, which is a thick rubberized plastic with a minimum of 25-year guarantee. I've already got my planting in there to screen out the roof of the house next door and the shed, but it's all small. It's all understory, it's all bird related. I don't need any more huge gums here because I've got them in the background. So once I've got all the underfelt and carpet down, then I'll put the plastic over, and it will fill when the overflow of the second tank starts to run. So I've got time. The other thing is, what do you do about the overflow from the dam? If we got several days of torrential rain in November, what are my neighbours going to say when the pond fills up and runs into their place? So the design is, in this case, the water will back up into the holding pond, the first one here, and then it will slowly move out along a long flat race which has been designed, and the levels are right, that instead of the water turning into a creek as if it were going over a spillway, it will actually move out like a mini flood. Now, we're all happy about that because I've checked with everyone, and that is probably the sort of thing that happened here before houses were built. This is somewhat of a natural waterway going that way and that way. So what I've done is control the force of the water, slow it down, and provided for all those things that could happen in a huge rainstorm and flood. Now, when you're doing all this stuff with the land, you also have to think, what will I do with all the stuff I take out? And that is a problem, because there was a lot of fill came out of the pond area, a lot of fill came out of the rainwater tanks, the two of them. So as I'm now facing west this way, I looked at the north and thought it would be lovely to have a terrace there. So all the fill has gone round to this side. And without spending another penny, for the cost of putting in the rainwater tanks and the pond and the holding ground, I also have the beginning of a terrace. And I may use second-hand bricks or I may use stone, depends how much I can get. Will add to the amenity and to the warmth of the house again, because that whatever I use for materials for the terrace is going to store warmth for me. So I'm adding all the time to climate an equitable climate here. A climate which, although it's cold in winter, it's not bitter, and although it's hot in summer, it's not boiling. Bits of it were really hard work. I persevered with the weeds, carting stuff around the front, scratchy branches, stacking the firewood that you've seen. All that was pretty hard, yes. And then waiting is sometimes hard, waiting to get those second-hand aluminium windows or the screen doors I wanted that were really good quality. That's a bit hard. The day we moved the garden shed was very hard indeed. It nearly blew away, taking 3 of us with it, like Mary Poppins up in the sky. So there were moments, but on the whole, it's been a great experience. It's been very good. I'd still like a view. But at the moment, the quality in this garden is really very lovely, with the humidity, the filtered light, the green, the chooks in the background, the frogs having a sing. It really is about the best you can do, I think, in the suburbs. And I think it's made it a very valuable house. I think I've turned something that was so ordinary people would scorn it into something that's going to be highly desirable in the future. And the real secret is setting up my criteria and principles and then working to them very strictly. renewable materials, emit light, store it, and absolutely sticking to them. It's made it cheap, it's made it effective, and without that I've seen people go off track because they forget what their principles were. If you stick to those principles, which are permaculture, you'll end up very, very nice home. Very comfortable, very easy, low maintenance, low work, low bills, and a nice long-term future with it.